Hello and welcome back to Sharks Happen. On today's show, we are going to go over an attack on a boogie boarder, an attack on a kayaker, an attack on a surf skier. We'll finish out the show with what were you thinking. We'll bring that back again. And after that, I'm going to give you another story. This one is going to be the origin of where Break My Brain comes from and why it happened and why it happened so many times with the same person. So stick around. It's going to be a great show. Okay, now we're going to start out our show. We're going to go real quick over to Papua New Guinea off of Inuk Island. This attack happened sometime in 1959. We don't have any details on what the Pesingin list, this is the name of just a single name of the victim. We don't know what he was doing in the water, and we don't know what led up to the attack. All that we know is it was a fatal attack on him. He was bitten in the leg and in the abdomen. And you know, it turned out to be fatal, like a lot of the attacks we've covered over there in Papua New Guinea. Not a great place to be in the ocean, that's for sure. So that's the attack on Pesingin, 1959, an attack, a fatality, wound to the abdomen and leg, and we don't know what size shark or what kind. And we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Mozambique. We're going to go to the Limpopo River. We're going to go 3.2 kilometers up the river from the sea. So right where it's still going to be pretty much 100% ocean water. We'll get into the 3.2 kilometers distance towards the end of this, but right now this attack on Zulu Soto, 14 years old, it ends up happening on January 23rd of 1970. He is 3.2 miles up the Limpopo River. It doesn't give any details of the time of day, depth of water, who he's with, but it says he was attacked by a shark. And the shark ended up severing both of his hands and shredded one of his forearms in the process. So he loses both hands. They shred up his arm. He survives this attack. He ends up being taken in the hospital and ends up surviving the attack. They believe this was a bull shark, a Zambezi shark they call them over there, but a bull shark that was up in that river. Now, the funny thing about this is it's 3.2 kilometers up the river. And anybody that studied morphology of rivers and saltwater intrusion from the ocean into rivers will know that 3.2 kilometers is basically saltwater all the time. The tides are going to pump up miles up that river twice a day, and being just 2.5 miles from the ocean itself, most sharks can be in there, I would think. But probably bull sharks are going to be there mostly because they hang out in these rivers in Mozambique, obviously. So they point out in this story that it's only 3.2 kilometers up from the seamouth, which means that it's not brackish water and it's not fresh water. It's pretty much seawater. They admit that there. Yet we had Mr. Jeremy Wade where the tides are pushed up 9 miles twice a day on that river. The Breed River, and 25 miles up the river every time that the current is going with the tide. So if the current is pushing towards the river, it goes 25 miles up that river. Twice a day you have tides. So salt water's going that far up the river, and he caught his at about the same distance from the river mouth as here. He was 3 miles. This is about 2.5 miles. It's the attack on Zulu Soto, an attack, not an attempt to predate, both hands taken. We would assume that it's a bull shark, but without any definite, tooth fragments, something where they determine it's a bull shark. We're just going to leave it blank for the type of shark, and we'll move on. Okay, we're going to head over just south of International Speedway Boulevard Beach, and that is in Florida. And the date on this attack is September 13th of 2003. Aaron Edelson, he is out doing some boogie boarding with some friends. He's out on the water. It's early in the morning, just after 7 o'clock in the morning. He finds himself separated from his friends with his boogie board in 8 feet deep water, 75 yards from shore. So he's out in the water and he feels a bump, a pull, and then a sting. And he knows he's been bit by a shark. He can feel it thrashing around down by his legs. He never sees the shark, but he saw the blood start to stain the water, and yelled that he had a shark attack, and his friends got over along with the rest, I believe it was a lifeguard. All of them brought him into the beach, and then they started medical attention for him. He gets into the hospital, ends up with a 12-inch gash on his left calf, and it severed his Achilles tendon on that left leg. So he goes in and he has to have some extensive surgeries to be able to recover from this attack. He never saw the shark. They said that by the size of the bite mark, it was most likely a 6-foot shark. They just don't know what kind. And that's how we're going to have to put this one down for Aaron. It'll go in our books, 6-foot shark, an attack, not an attempt to predate. We just don't know what type of shark or the exact size. We just know it's probably around 6 feet because of the bite size. We'll move on. Okay, we're going to head over to Malilu Beach, and that is over at Western Australia. The date on this attack is June 20th of 2012. Martin Kane, he is 62 years old. He and some friends, they're out doing some surf skiing. He's out there surf skiing, and it's about 7:15 in the morning. He's about 150 yards from shore. He's 50 yards in front of his mates, so they're all paddling their surf skis. It sounds like there's 4 different surf skis for the 4 different people. And he's 50 yards in front of them, and just around 7:15, they notice a pod of dolphins. And they all kind of slow down to check out the dolphins. Martin says he started to get cold, so he says, well, I'm going to carry on to warm himself up. It's early in the morning. He starts paddling, and right when he starts paddling is when he gets hit. He says that it felt like a freight train hit him, and it sounds like it hit him from the back, sent him flying in the air, and he ends up in the water. Now, when Martin's in the water, he says that he looks around. He says he didn't know what happened when he was flying through the water, and the next thing he knows, he's in the water. And as he looks to his side, he says that when the water clears, he can see the tail of the shark. And it's thrashing side to side as the shark, obviously, it sounds like it was still biting on his canoe. Now, he's thinking, great, I'm finished. I'm in the water with this thing. And it turns out to be a 10-foot shark, over 3 meters. So at least a 10-foot shark, and they believe it probably is a white pointer. Probably is a great white, but it could also, be in Western Australia. I think that they probably have bronzies in the area. So they weren't positive which shark. But now he's got to get back in, and he's got his mate, and his buddy is behind him, like I said, about 50 yards away. Well, the shark is leaving the kayak now. Martin is with his kayak, and his buddy has to paddle his kayak right over the shark. The shark crosses right over his path, going right underneath his kayak, but he still paddles his way over, gets Martin up on the back of his surf ski, and takes him in. Martin ends up with no injury. He ends up with a great story. The kayak was damaged, but I don't know if it was fatal. So that's an attack by a 3-meter shark, 10-foot plus. They didn't identify it, don't have any teeth markings on the kayak that would identify it, it sounds like. So we're just not sure if it's a great white, maybe a tiger, or even, another culprit that goes after those surfboards quite a bit over there in Australia, which is the bronze whaler. So it's probably one of those 3, but we'll put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Damage to the board, damage to the kayak, no injury to the surfer, and we just don't know what type of shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to Aniahumalu Bay, and that is over off of Big Island, Hawaii. The date, April 23rd of 2019. Kimberly Bishop, she is 65 years old. She is with her husband, and they are out doing paddleboarding and kayaking. Her husband is paddleboarding, and she is kayaking. And about 8:30 in the morning, she's about 150 feet from shore. I'm sorry, she's 150 feet from a pier. She's about 300 feet from shore. So she's close to the pier, but farther away from shore, in 20-foot deep water. And like I said, it's 8:30 in the morning, and she is taking photos of fish down in the water, it sounds like in front of her kayak, maybe on the side, when suddenly her kayak is hit from the back. She's flipped over, falls out of the kayak, and then immediately is bit on the inner thigh. Gets a bite to the inner thigh, screams out to her husband, and he looks over and he sees the fins in the water, the shark fins, and he paddles over as quickly as he can. Now when she's in the water with the shark, she's been bitten in the leg, she knows she's been bitten, she yells to her husband, but he's quite a bit away, and he's, like I said, on a paddleboard, not on a canoe. On a kayak like she is. So she knows she has to flip her kayak over and get back in it because she's worried about getting bit again by the shark. So she gets flipped over, gets back in the kayak, he gets back over to it and he throws her a line. He's going to try to take her in, but you know, trying to tow a kayak with a stand-up paddleboard doesn't work very well, and they flag down another larger canoe, a larger boat that came over and assisted them getting to shore. She goes in, she has a 10 to 12, about a 12-inch gash to her inner thigh, and they assume this is a tiger shark. Experts that looked at the wound and heard about the wound said, yeah, it sounds like a tiger shark, probably from an 8 to 10 foot range of a tiger shark for a 12-inch bite like that. Not something you want to deal with. Lucky that it didn't, you know, take the whole chunk with it. It doesn't sound like that happened. She ends up getting stitched up, survives the attack. So we put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate by a tiger shark. We're just not sure what size. Definitely large enough for our stats, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks. We're going to head over to a spot known as Leftovers over in Oahu, Hawaii. This happens at Chun's Reef Support Park. So I'll see if I can't find that on my maps and pin this down. This happened right near that park. And the date on this attack is April 3rd of 2012. Joshua Holly, he is 28 years old and he is out doing some surfing, early afternoon surfing. It's about 12:30. He's got himself about 40 yards from shore, 35 to 40 feet deep water, probably waiting on a wave, and he feels a bite stinging to his leg, to his foot, and he looks down and he says that he saw a big dorsal fin, and that says the shark is making its way to the front of the board. So the shark bit him in the foot and then started coming up to the front of the board. The shark gets up to the front of the board, and of course he's laying there. He starts punching on the shark. It says he hits it 2 or 3 times. Shark was on the way. A couple surfers that are in the area, they come over and they help him in. He's given first aid. They take him in and he ends up needing 42 stitches. He ends up with a bite to his foot, pretty severe bite to his foot, and it lacerated two tendons, so they had to repair those also. So he not only had the operation, he probably had quite a bit of rehabilitation to go through afterwards, but luckily he ends up not losing his foot. They think this is he had identified it as a 10-foot tiger shark that went ahead and bit him and then came up to the front of his board before he hit it, and it went on its way. Very big shark, very lucky that it didn't take his foot. That's what a tiger shark is known for. Its MO is a single bite, but the problem is a lot of times it's taking something with it. That's different than most of the other sharks. A single bite, they're usually not removing you know, arms and legs with them. If they're doing that, it's probably going to be a pretty vicious attack, but a tiger shark, that's just what they do. So that's the attack on Joshua Holly, an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a 10-foot tiger shark, and we'll get to the end of the show with what were you thinking. Stick around. Okay, now we're going to finish out the show. We're going to go with what were you thinking, and we're going to go over to Sardinia, Italy. The date on this attack is June 10th of 2012, and like I said, Sardinia, Italy. Giorgio Zara, he is out and he's a photographer, I guess. I've seen him one of the stories that I've read about this. He's a photographer and he's on the beach and he finds stranded about a 5-foot blue shark. The author of the one story says they get up to 14 feet. They do. They get up to about 11, 12 feet. They're pretty big sharks, just skinny little one, torpedoes. But they get pretty long, but this is just a small one. This is a 5-footer and it's beached itself. So Giorgio goes out to help this shark back into the water, and he does it by himself. And that's where this, what were you thinking? I've seen other people carrying them out there. Yeah, you saved the shark, but, and then there's the one where the guy just kind of disappears with the shark. I wasn't sure that was real. It just kind of made me laugh that he's kind of helping the shark out and then all of a sudden the shark takes him under. Giorgio's helping out this 5-foot blue shark and it ends up biting him in the leg. And it does enough damage to where he has to spend 20 days, it's reported, in the hospital to be fixed up from it. Not sure that that includes any rehab that he does, but it might, you never know. So 20 days he loses, you know, from, you know, what were you thinking, or no good deed goes unpunished. But that's our story of Giorgio Zara. He goes in there for what were you thinking, for helping, you know, help the shark if you have help helping the shark. Otherwise, I would advise not to mess with the shark. So that's our show for today. At least the shark portion of the show. And I want to say that the store, I have the black t-shirts, the black hats, the white t-shirts, the long sleeve multiple shark shirt, and the pens are all on eBay. So if you go on ebay.com, you throw in Sharks Happen, you will see all of those. It's not going to be my jackets and the things that I had on Etsy. That's going to have to wait a little bit. Etsy's a different way that they run, to where, you know, I have to go ahead and pay my supplier for the order, and then they ship it out, and then I get paid for the order later. So that's going to be a little delayed to get the jackets and everything else back up, but they are going to be back. I am going to start another channel here. I think I'm going to do my With It channel on here. I'm back to work now, so I'm hoping to get one of these episodes out a week for the shark attacks. The good thing is I'm going to be coming back with, we're going to be getting right into top 5s probably, attacks of bull sharks, tiger sharks, probably doing a top 10 of great white sharks. These are all the attacks that we've covered, the worst ones I know of in my rankings, the way that I would rank them. And along with that, we're going to get, I'm in the process of updating all these attacks into my database. I should have 1,000 of them we'll be able to go through. That's about as many as H. David Baldrige had. We'll have a, you know, a little bit better idea of where we're going to end up with these stats, because the more we get, the more numbers of attacks we get in there, the more that the law of large numbers is going to pick up, and it's not going to change that much as soon as we get, you know, maybe 2,000 attacks in. We're probably going to have to cover 3,500 attacks just to catch up, and I'm only 1,000 in. So we got a long way to go, but a lot of these are not going to have that much information, and it's going to be older attacks and newer attacks. And you're going to get some 1,800 attacks, and like, you know, we will cover smaller sharks. The one that we covered today on the Kayak, it was first reported they thought it was a 5-foot black tip reef shark. And I was like, there's no way. 12-inch gash from a 5-foot reef shark. A 5-foot reef shark would be about 4 inches, unless it thrashed like crazy. And they don't attack people, they're afraid of people. I don't run across them very much unless they bite you in the face and they're scared or something. Reef sharks, I've had a couple of them bite people in the head, but I don't think they were black tip reef sharks. So that would have been the first one. But a black tip reef shark of 5 foot is not, I don't think, going to have the girth and the power to knock somebody's kayak over. And that's when, you know, they sent that to that expert, and he said, yeah, 12-inch gash on her leg, that's probably a tiger shark, and there's no way it's a 5-6 footer. So I agreed. It's an 8 to 10 footer is what I think from the bite. So that's how I came up with that. And that's it for the show. Now I'm going to get into the story of where Break My Brain comes from and how it ended up happening, and we'll get into that next. Okay guys, we're going to finish off the show here with this little story. My favorite, actually. These are my Ted Nugent stories, and I'm going to combine all of it together. I don't want to get into Ted Nugent more than once on the show. It was late 88. My girlfriend's dad, the cop that I was in that shooting with, going around in the Jeep. Again, I'm with him, and he is a partner in this place in St. Clair Shores called Four Seasons Taxidermy. I worked there for about a year, maybe 2 hunting seasons, and just taking the pelts off and salting them, getting them ready for whatever you have to do. So that's what I did there. I would saw up the antlers for the antler mounts, things like that. So I worked there. Ted Nugent, one day Frank had gotten a mount, and this is before we were ever at that place. The Four Seasons, Frank used to do taxidermy on his own. He got a deer in. It was a huge buck, and it was from Jackson, which is where Ted Nugent lives. Frank took a picture of the deer, sent it over to Ted Nugent with a letter saying, hey, how did you not end up with this? And Ted Nugent got back to him, and they became good friends. So Ted let us use his black bear to put in it was a ridiculous story getting that thing to the shop, but we put that in the front of the shop at the taxidermy. And then Frank eventually ended up opening his own archery shop, and that's where I went to work. Rock and Roll Hunters is what he called it, because he was friends with Ted. So he called it Rock and Roll Hunters, and then Ted let him put authorized Ted Nugent dealer on shit. He didn't do that for a lot of people, Ted didn't. So that's how close these two were. Well, all this time, Ted is using them like, when he goes to the shows and does these interviews and he takes his guitars to pretty much anything he does, he gives the guitars to Frank and says, you know, take these home, make sure they're okay. Well, of course, they end up in my hands. So I have this piece of shit guitar that I painted green, that I wanted it to be this really nice green that I ended up having later on, that I bought, but not this green that I painted. So I have a garbage guitar, but I'm playing the best guitars you could ever imagine. The dark blue one, that must have been one of the originals, because it seems like Paul Reed Smith came out in the 80s. This seems like an 80s guitar. The real dark, solid blue Paul Reed Smith. Awesome guitar, plays like a dream. Then he would bring the zebra stripe, and that's the one that ended up in the Damn Yankees videos. I got to play that one at least a half a dozen times. His snakeskin guitar, which is my favorite Paul Reed Smith guitar of all time. I got to play that a few times, and one of the times I got to play it was when I had to set up his equipment. He was doing a speech and playing a couple songs at a tree planting in Imlay City, and I got to go there and set up his amps and his snakeskin guitar for that. So I played all his guitars and stuff. So I had ran into him a couple times. One time we met him at the first time I met him was at the airport real quick. We had to run out there, and Frank had to pick up his gun. He can't fly with his gun, and he didn't want to take it home. He had a flight, so he called Frank. We went down there, picked up his gun, and held onto it until he got back. That was the first time I met him. Went with Frank a couple times just to run into him before. And then one day I'm sitting at Frank's house, and this is the summer of 1989. It's nice outside. That's how I know it's the summer. So I'm 20 years old at the time, just turned 20 in March of that year. And I'm sitting there, and it's like a weekend, and I'm at my girlfriend's real early. It's like 9 in the morning or something, and the phone rings. My girlfriend answers it, and she yells to her dad, "Dad, it's Ted." And I know who Ted is. Ted Nugent's on the phone. So Frank gets on the phone, and he's all excited. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And then I hear Frank tell him, "Well, Hal's here. You want to talk to him?" Ted must have said yeah, because Frank gives me the phone, and Ted is doing that fast talk that he does on stage. He can turn that stuff on and off on a dime, and he's got it flying to where I can only pick up one sentence, and then the sentence I picked up was, "You want to come on out to the ranch with Frank?" Yeah. My top 10 bands. I mean, he's in there. He's in there with the Cars, with ELO, with Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Bad Company, Joe Walsh. He's in there with all my favorite bands. Yes, I want to go. So I go out there. So we go out to his ranch, and we get there, and I leave my guitar. Frank tells me to bring my guitar. He'll sign it. I says, I'm embarrassed of that guitar. Frank says, bring the guitar. So I leave the guitar out in the car. We go into the house, into the ranch. He shows us all around. Him and his wife, Shemaine, they're cutting he made 2 VHS videos. This is VHS time and cassette time, not disc time and download time. So they're making these 2 videos, VHS videos, Down to Earth in Archers, Africa. And she's got her equipment all in there, and along both sides, when you walk in a double door entrance to his family room, he had stacks of guitar cases, 2 sides stacked, so 4 stacks all the way to the ceiling. I'm like, holy shit. So then they go outside. I didn't bring my bow and arrow, but they go outside and they start walking Ted's backyard archery range, which he's got. You know, you stand up here on this tree mount and you shoot down on that, stand down here and shoot up into the. It was crazy. You go all through there, and they're live, you know, actual animal targets and are shooting at them. Fun stuff. That happens for about a half hour, 40 minutes. Then we end up back in the house, and Ted picks up his guitar, and now it's time for him to play Fredbear. So he rips off Fredbear, and it just sounds awesome. Just like the damn recording of the thing. It sounded just like that. And he played the thing and sang it, and I was like, holy shit. Now here's where the break in my brain comes in. Ted, when he talks to me, he always says my name when he talks to me. This always shocked me with this guy. I'm a 20-year-old kid. I'm not even his friend. And when he talks to me, he addresses me by my name. And it would break my brain. Like I said, what he did was he asked me what I wanted him to play. Oh my God. My favorite song of all time by Ted Nugent is Paralyzed. It's one of his earliest songs. Excellent tune. I wanted to hear Paralyzed. But when he said, Hal, what do you want to hear? My head is going, it broke my brain. I'm going, did he say my name? Yeah, he said my name. Now what do I say? I can't come up with a song and I say Stranglehold. The most common song, the one that I actually know how to play most of it, so I really don't want to hear it. I want to hear the one that I can't play, which is Paralyzed. I want to see him play that. And I just froze up. And then after that, I was around him a few other times, but every time he said my name, it kind of just took my brain and broke it, because I couldn't believe that Ted Nugent was saying my name. So that's where that came from. He gets done playing the tune and puts his guitar down, and we're talking a little bit, and Frank mentions to him, Hal's got his guitar here, and it's out in the car. I'm sitting on one couch, Ted's on another couch with Frank. And Ted looks at me and says, Hal, go get your guitar. I says, I don't want to get it. It's a piece of shit. He says, Hal, go get your guitar. I says, I'm not going to get that piece of shit. I'm embarrassed of it. He gets a stern voice now. So Ted Nugent is now telling me, Hal, go get that guitar. I go out there and I get the guitar. I hand this guitar to him, and he's got a black, one of those thick black markers, and I hear it squeaking its ass off. I'm like, what the hell is he signing? So here's the the piece of shit. But I don't know that you can see this very good, but I'm going to put this here and see, maybe you can. But if you can see it, it says, rock this piece of shit. Because I called it a piece of shit so many times. Rock this piece of shit to death. Ted Nugent, 89 and beyond, and he drew an arrow. That's my favorite story of Ted Nugent. So I wanted to get most of that out right now. I got to hang out with him a lot, and actually we're going to get into one more story, and it's because I went to his Whiplash Bash. I think it was in 1990, 1991, I think 1990 though. Went to his Whiplash Bash, and the Damn Yankees were there. And I got to meet them. And then there's a story that kind of connects to it in 2019. So I'll get into that another time. But this is about the time that I got to go and hang out at Ted Nugent's house. Have him play me the new song that he wrote, Fredbear, the day before. And he signed this guitar. Now, I just want to show you this real quick. Okay, this is a Paul Reed Smith. This is not the Ted Nugent ones, but it's damn nice. And it's everything I ever wanted in a guitar. This is a 2016. I just got rid of my 2003 Paul Reed Smith that was just awesome. But in 2016, which is when I bought this one, and they went ahead and changed the pickups, and this thing screams. But this is a Paul Reed Smith. And Ted Nugent's that I played were just like this, only they had zebra stripes, or they had the other thing. Same guitars. Of course, this one probably costs a third, maybe even less, than the ones that he owned, that they give him. But this thing is so cool, because you can't tell, but it's kind of purple, and it's got these silver all through it. This thing changes colors like you could not believe. But I did end up getting myself I've been playing Paul Reed Smiths ever since I could afford them, and that's quite a while. So I just wanted to tell you the little story of how my brain ended up starting breaking and where that came from. That's where Break My Brain came from, and it happens just about every time Ted Nugent said my name. I hope you enjoyed the show, but remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.